All right, we're back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast, and this one's going to take us back to yesteryear as well, just because of an example. It wasn't the reason for the title of this podcast, and the topic for today is not just about motivation, which we've talked about many times on the podcast, but the specific types of motivation, mainly the metaphor of the carrot and the stick. Pain versus pleasure motivation. We're going to break it down here in a second, but what are your thoughts as we jump into this topic, Steven?
Yeah, it's a good topic. It's an old school motivation method. I remember when we were in the master tax days, and the first thought I had was when I think I was banging my head against the wall, cold calling prospects and whatnot. And I think you were trying to get into the sales game. We're like 22 years old at the time, right? And you come walking in, you draw a rabbit and a carrot hanging in front of it to try and it was chasing the stick, and you said, the starving rabbit. So it was just so funny. It was the first thought I had.
That was exactly what it was, and that was when the opportunities were arising to move into sales. You and a few other people knew long before I did that that's where I should be, and had my hesitations, but I had the quota. I was looking at how comp plans work, and
that's what it was.
I wrote quota in the carrot. The quota is the carrot, and I the starving rabbit. And little did I know we'd be recording a podcast on this.
Comes full circle. I think it's hilarious.
And that was kind of an interesting example, because as we break down, we're really talking about pleasure and pain motivation. And a lot of folks look for motivation saying, oh, it's the dream life. It's these destinations of income, title, house, all these things that we're working toward, when oftentimes it's the stick that is much more motivating in regard to getting away from pain. And that kind of frames up the direction we're going to go for today.
Yeah, I mean, your visual, with the rabbit and the stick coming off its back and the carrot in front of it was more so about the motivation for the reward of the carrot. But the carrot and the stick of the metaphor is literally like the stick, like more like a mule or a donkey, where you're whacking him to go, right? Like you're hitting the animal with the stick as punishment. If you don't go, I'm going to hit you. And so what's more motivating? Is it the food in front of you to continue one step forward, or is it the punishment if you don't? And that's kind of the old school method. I don't know what's better, or what's, if that's even relates to modern day type of leadership. I don't know how well that works anymore, but I think it's a good topic to at least highlight what that is. And I think in some form, we're all motivated by one or the other. I think it's maybe in certain situations. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Maybe I'll come up with a story by the end of this episode, an experience of where I was motivated by the carrot in one situation and motivated by the stick in another. I'm sure all across our lives, we have those moments. But it's definitely an interesting metaphor and a really cool method that translates from business, sales, and then self motivation. What are what are your fears? And that's why you're doing things. Or what are you going for? What are your goals? And that's why you're doing things, and vice versa.
100%. And I know you said modern day leadership has changed. And I think it takes us back to, back to the primal brains, right? Running from a predator or getting to our food. Those were kind of the bottom line. But now, in an era of convenience, I think what often happens is with the carrot piece relatively taken care of for us, besides our ambitious and aspirational endpoints, that complacency can actually become the stick in regard to your comfort level becoming so uncomfortable and frustrated with how things currently are that it's the stick itself to get us to change. I think Hormozy says it really well when he says you're basically getting to the point where the pain of not changing has to become greater than the pain of change. And you kind of have to wrap your mind around that a little bit, but it's this complacency. And are you so dissatisfied with the way things are, even though you're surviving and have everything that you need? is it really what you want? And that's what we talk about in this podcast, and why we're bringing up this topic is you're defining success for yourself. And is the definition that you're living right now truly what you want? And are you willing to work for it if not so?
Yeah. I mean, the carrot and the stick is a full blown extrinsic motivation. Like, it's like you kind of can lose yourself of what you truly want if you're purely motivated for the reward versus what not to avoid. And I can't remember who said it. And it's been used, a bunch of speakers use it, and it's a good motivational tool of doing what you want out of this life. You know, you only live once, right? And so it's like when you get to heaven or wherever you believe you go, when your time passes here, and you're at the end of it, and imagine being face to face with what you could have been. And it's like, that is powerful, and that's a impactful statement, and be like, oh man, like I had all this time down here to do the things that I really could have been or could have done differently. And I always wanted to, but I just never did them. And it could be like a form of regret or whatever, but you look at your future state, or in that state of like what you were supposed to come out of this life, what you're supposed to be at the end of it. I don't know, is that's the reward. And so you're motivated because you want to get to that person, the best version of yourself. And that's the 1% of working on yourself, getting better every single day, and it compounds over time. Or is it the fear that of I'm never going to get there, so I'm going to put in the work, or just, I think that takes those types of metaphors and things makes you think a lot of what you really want out of life. And that's where it comes back to intrinsic. And how do you motivate yourself? Are you afraid of the certain situation of what the outcome will be, or are you excited for the possibilities? And so that's why you do it.
We were talking about it before we jumped on, but oversimplifying this and getting down to first principles and to the basic, there is one really overwhelming stick that you just talked about. What is fear and what is pain at its utmost definition? At the end of the day, what we are trying to avoid or afraid most of, what does it usually come down to?
Embarrassment. What do people think of me? It could be my failure.
Keep going. The ultimate.
In life, death. Like that. And that's the thing. The fear of failure is typically taken from being snakes.
ostracized from the class.
Not to interrupt you, but some people say they'd rather die than be in a pit of snakes.
Public speaking. Exactly.
Yeah, public speaking. Exactly.
But the snake is back to death. The public speaking and the embarrassment that you say is back to death because of our tribe being removed from the herd used to result in death. And the reason I say that is like, it sounds morbid, and we've talked about it on the podcast multiple times, but really meditating and thinking about the impermanence of your life is important, because time, every year we get older and we're saying, oh, I can't believe how fast it's going. I always think about our conversation we had at Subway 14 years ago, or more than that, whatever it was. But can you believe how fast things are going? We had no kids. We were partying everything. And we're like, man, it's just going so fast. It is nothing compared to now.
Yeah.
And remembering how limited this spin around the earth is in this existence, I think is the ultimate stick that we can move in our favor. Not about rushing or trying to squeeze too much in and being productive just for the sake, but knowing that we've only got one shot, as you just said, I think really is the ultimate stick.
Well, yeah, and there's the samurais and the whole Lao Tzu. My apologies for stating that wrong, but it's like these guys, these samurai guys, like that's why they're so in tune with the world and what they're not afraid of it. They're not afraid of death. Their life doesn't matter to them. Their life matters on serving others in their community and all of that. So they're not motivated by the punishment. They're maybe not even motivated by the reward. That's a whole different animal. And a little bit probably off topic than this method of the carrot and the stick. But I mean, I think it taking this old school approach, I do believe that this day and age, it is a bit more, if you're a leader, a bit more of a commander dictatorship type style. And I don't think it works anymore, or it works as well. I think being more of a coach and understanding one's goals will allow you to continue that motivation. But if you have to get someone to do something quickly because it's just an urgent matter or whatever, and that you need their help, then yeah, it's like, hey, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Or if you do this, then I'll give you a bonus or whatever, because we just need this. We need to get it done. So whatever it takes. But from a long-term perspective, I don't think that those models work. And I think it's understanding who the person is you're talking to, what their personal goals are, and helping them align that path with what you need to get done. And it's like, if someone says, hey, let's say you're a leader of a team and they want to grow within the organization, and they want promotion, and they want pay raises or whatever. And, they want all these things, but they're not doing the certain things that will get them there. It's not putting the fear of hey, if you don't do this, you're never getting promoted. Or if you do this, I'll give you a promotion. It's more about, hey, these are the goals that you outlined for me, and these are the things that we need to see, and here's what it's going to take. Are you in or are you out? And it's more of that type of approach where it's very collaborative and working together for the success of those goals.
Yeah, this is what we agreed on that we wanted, you personally and the organization's goals, and how are we doing with that? And one of the mental models, which we talk a lot about frameworks and mental models on this podcast, that we are addressing here is loss aversion. And there have been a number of scientific studies that have proven the percentages might be off a little bit, but human beings feel the pain of loss twice as strongly as the pleasure of gain. This is done with some casino experiments, controlled study groups, where once there is something in our possession and we perceive it to be ours, we will do a lot more to not lose that, as opposed to the idea of gaining something else in the future. And that makes sense, just human nature and the thought of ownership. But that loss aversion can also work against us if we have a scarcity mindset and we're not also taking into consideration what we need to do to keep those things that we have gathered and achieved, versus being okay with losing a certain amount of those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of good real world examples. You remember the movie Glengarry Glen Ross?
Oh yeah. Set of steak knives.
That's right. It was like the initiation getting into sales is you had to watch this movie, Glengarry Glen Ross. And it was all about, it was salesmen, and Alec Baldwin comes in, and he's like the head honcho, and he's like giving this motivating speech, but he's like really harsh on the guys. And he's like, the Glengarry leads, you'll get the good leads. Those are the best leads that you want. And it was like, if you're going to get the leads, and we're going to have a competition, and whoever wins the competition gets a car, right? Isn't it a car and then steak knives?
Yeah.
And then, and second place was steak knives, I think. And then third place was you're fired.
You're fired.
You're fired. So third place was
for closers.
Coffee is for closers, the famous line. And I think that was Tom Lemon, maybe in the back. Yeah. He was in the back.
Jack Lemon,
right?
Yeah.
He was filling up. Tom Lemon's the golfer, isn't he? Tom Lemon's a golfer.
Tom Lehman.
Tom Lehman. I'm getting it all wrong. Anyway, the whole point of the story is like the guy's in the back filling up his coffee cup, and he's like not paying attention, and he's yelling at him. He's like, "Hey, get over here! Coffee's for closers. You're not closing business, whatever." But that's like a good real world example of the carrot and the stick. Is he was saying, "Hey, if you are at the top of the team in sales or whatever, you're going to get this reward, and if you're not, you're going to get fired." And so that's the stick. But, and I think another great one is what's going on right now with the NBA Finals. And you have the Indiana Pacers versus Oklahoma City Thunder. And on the Pacers, you got a guy named Tyrese Halliburton, who was voted by anonymous NBA players across the league as the most overrated player in the league. And so for him, now he's in the finals, and they're up 2-1 at the time of this recording. And now he's balling out, and he's doing some incredible stuff. And so he took what the naysayers were saying about him as motivation to be at the top of his game. not necessarily wanting to win a championship for legacy. Now, I'm sure that's a piece of it, but it seems to me like he's taking the stick as his motivation of like the people that are beating him down to say, haha, I got you. Like you're not going to tear me down. I'm going to be better than you because of the crap that you're saying about me. As opposed to you had like the Jordans and the Kobes that were striving for championships because that was legacy for them. That was the reward of just being the most dominant player on earth. And so you have two sides of the situation here of that method, the carrot and the stick.
Yeah, and taking a look at this breakdown and doing kind of the research, it became evident that a lot of times the stick presents itself during rock bottom moments. Like people wind up, and that's just ultimate pain, right? We talk about people's rock bottom, whether it's in addiction, financial, in sports. You reach a point to where the discomfort and the pain is so heavy, a change has to be made. And unfortunately, a lot of humans have to get to that point before they can make the change. And that is the stick. And honestly, humiliation, public embarrassment and shame can be that, to where, okay, this is so uncomfortable living this way right now. A change is evident. Ideally, though, we want to be working toward a carrot before we get to that point. We want to have a mission. That's where we get to our massive transformative purpose. That's our carrot. And I think the problem is oftentimes that's a little more vague and cloudy as a North Star that we're trying to map to. So it's a little bit more difficult to keep that motivation going as opposed to the real-time visceral pain of the stick.
Yeah, I think of like the stick being, especially when you're challenging yourself, of being a bit like imposter syndrome in a way where you're like, I'm trying something new and I don't know if I can do it, or I don't feel like I belong here. Like, I think that is your intrinsic stick beating you down and saying like, you can't do it. And it's like, how do you battle through that? And can you be motivated by that? And can you power through to get to the point where you do find that purpose and you do find that belonging? And when you have your massive transformative purpose and you've got that big North Star, and like you said, it's hard to, that is supposed to be vague because you're supposed to do a lot of things within that to remain in alignment. But the way to break that down is just like any other sales pipeline. It's, you break it down into chunks and you say, okay, here's my purpose. This is what I want to fulfill in my life over the course of my life. And this is what I'm solely working on to remain in alignment with this purpose. As it stands right now, there's no reason why you can't iterate and, change and adapt and update that purpose going forward as you grow older and life events happen and whatever. But as of right now, you have your massive transformative purpose and you break it down. It's okay. Well, what are my lofty goals? What are the goals that I want to achieve in order to remain in alignment and help myself get to the next level within this purpose? And then you take those lofty goals and you break them down into strong targets, and you break that down even further to quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, routine type of habits and goals. And so that goes back all the way down to the habit formation and routine and kind of the structure of one's life to remain on their path. But yeah, I think this whole motivation topic, like you can be motivated by others, you can be motivated, self-motivating. But this is just one method that worked. And, especially back in the day where it's like, I'm going to strike fear in these people to do what I want. And it could be like a form of manipulation. Or I'm going to give them a huge, handsome reward to do what I want. At the end of the day, getting what you want is what was perceived the way to do it, was by either striking fear or rewarding. And they gave a name to it. That's the carrot and the stick.
I think that's why sales makes so much sense to me. And if you have the right mindset, because both are built in, right? There really is the carrot of commissions and high earnings potential. That is definitely motivating. But most salespeople it's not only competitive, but what I love about sales is being in the front lines and knowing that revenue is generated for the entire organization and it's measurable what I contributed to the organization. That's why I love sales. It's the most pure, documentable way to show contribution. And when you're not contributing to the organization, that is painful. When you're not achieving and not doing what you know you're capable of, there's built-in pain. And that's what we were really trying to drive home, or I wanted to share with the audience, is that how can we have both in a really nice, I don't know about balance is the right word, but a nice combination of the stick moving us along and pushing us from the back while we have a very crystal clear carrot that we are mapping toward. When you have that going, that's kind of a flywheel effect, and it's momentum and physics in the world of defining success for yourself.
So what would you say is yours?
I have to say that I'm extremely pain motivated. Yeah. The pain of, again, back to not reaching our potential, letting people on my team down, letting that definitely motivates me. But I also have gotten much better doing all this work to mapping out that carrot and seeing what the ideal future looks like and making progress toward that. So I think that's why I wanted to share this so much, is because it really has been a combination. It's not only pain and what happens if I fail, but I am mapping toward a pretty awesome, massive transformative purpose. How about you?
Yeah, dude. Well, before I give you my answer, like, obviously I've known you a long time, and the amount of growth obviously both of us have had in the last 15 years, 10 years is pretty impeccable. But I mean, you've gone through a lot that most people haven't in their entire lives. And you have been able to get through some really tough times. And I'm just really proud and just really grateful that you're in my life. And it's really awesome to have this friendship and to see how much you've succeeded through that. And I love to hear the fact that it's slowly transitioning out of the only driver to be able to map towards that carrot and find some reward. And that's what you're seeking. And that's what is motivating you, and not so much to fall back in some of those dark places. So just really proud of you, brother.
That means a ton to me, man. It really, truly does.
Now
you have to answer.
Yeah, I'll answer. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm definitely more motivated by, it's tough. I think I'm motivated more by the carrot. I'm motivated by more what's possible. I don't have a fear of failure because I just always have this mindset of like, I'll figure it out, or there's just another way to do things. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's some resiliency, and there'll be some times that I'll just power through. And so that's not necessarily my big motivator. My motivator is like, can I get there? And like, and maybe that's a question, it's a failure question, but it's more of, what are the outcomes of this? If I really put my mind to this, like, what are the outcomes? And ironically, that scares me a little bit of what the outcome will be if I were to just do certain situations, right? Like, it almost is like if there is some success tied to it of like some ultimate goals that happen, it almost fears me a little bit because it's an area I've never been, right? Like we all have goals and levels that we want to get to that we've never been. And that can be a scary place too, because you're not sure what that will look like. And I think that's the challenge for everybody. That's why everyone is in their comfort zone, because they don't want to go down and they don't want to go up. They just want to be nice and even. And I don't think that's right. I think you always have to strive for, unless you're at a certain point in your life where you feel like you've at that level that you want to be, and your whole purpose is now to give back to the community or to serve others or whatever. And that should always be your purpose. But I think for me, the carrot is still very much my motivator. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I'm motivated by the lasting legacy that I want to leave for, my circle, my family. And it's not the pain or anything of not getting there that motivates me. It's the high goals that I set for myself, and that's what continues to motivate me, because I'm not there yet.
That makes total sense, and I'm not surprised we have a well-rounded We have both perspectives on this podcast. And I think you bring up a great point that if you're listening to this podcast, you're likely not completely stuck in that limbo. You are evaluating and looking to how you can improve. Most people aren't even thinking about this. What's driving their behavior? It's an awareness perspective. And again, listeners, you're taking the time to actually reflect on your life and what changes you can make. This allows you to take it just one step further and be like, what is really driving my behavior? And then you can tweak it. This actually just hit me as we're talking right now that it really is a way that you are different as a listener in regard to self-improvement and adjusting. And this can allow you to take, how can I tweak whichever end is motivating me more, and maybe take a perspective on the other side, whichever that might be, the carrot or the stick.
This is a great topic. Good conversation, man. I know we got some guests coming up in the weeks to come. So if you're listening, definitely give us a follow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you catch your podcasts. Feel free to download, leave us some comments, maybe some ideas of what you want to hear. Hopefully you're finding some value out of these things. We're having a blast doing them week in and week out. So we'll catch you next week. And until then, the carrot and the stick. Find your motivation.
And I, the starving rabbit.
Yep.